Hi there, Terry Shaneyfelt for UAB School of Medicine. In this video, I'd like to cover a couple of things. One is I'd like to talk about a personal learning network and how important that can be for professional development. And then I want to focus in the end on using Twitter to cultivate that personal learning network. Now, the focus of this is really going to be on education because I became very interested in personal learning networks, trying to improve my knowledge of educational technology. So I'm going to focus on that. And those of you who are interested in EBM, in the very end, I'm going to give some EBM thought leaders that I think you should follow on Twitter to begin to develop your own personal learning network. So let's focus first on what is a personal learning network. Well, it's just a group of people who you engage with and exchange information with. And it could be a local group of people. It could be a group of people you see yearly, let's say at a society meeting. Or it could be, in this case that I'm going to focus on here, is a group of people across the World Wide Web that you interact with using a tool, something like Twitter. And you can do a variety of things with these people. You can collect information from that. That's one of the first things I started doing, is that I didn't really know a lot about educational technology. I knew I was very interested in it, and I started finding some thought leaders, and I just started collecting information from them. They would post articles that I probably would never have come across otherwise, and I started to read them. And so it was a great source of information for me. It's also a good way to communicate with other people in this area. And slowly, as you start using tools and interacting with these people, you really develop a good exchange of information. You can collaborate with each other and create new information together. And really, it's a good lifelong learning tool. So what can they really do for you? Well, for me, they became a rich source of professional development. I began to learn a lot from content area specialists because I had limited access to people with the knowledge and skills that I was interested in on my local campus. I learned about new technologies through my personal learning network, and I discovered things I didn't even know existed out there. So I learned about apps and computer programs and things like that I had no way of knowing existed. And I got that through interacting with my personal learning network. I talked about earlier how I located resources, and when I find things, I exchange them with other people in my personal learning network who follow me also. And then importantly, there are times where you're going to need help in projects or solving problems at work or in your personal life. And a good thing you can use your personal learning network for is for collaborative solutions. You can put questions out there and people will answer back and offer ways to solve your problems. And really, I mention it as being a tool for professional development, but it's also a tool for personal development and very personalized learning. I follow a very specific group of people. I don't follow everybody out there who has the interest area that I'm also interested in. I follow a very select group of people who I think I get something from and who hopefully I can offer something to. So how do you build a personal learning network? Well, social media is a very powerful tool to build a personal learning network. And really, Twitter is one of the most important tools that we now use for personal learning networks. I'd never been a big Twitter user, and I sort of stumbled across this as a very important tool. And now I read Twitter pretty much every day, trying to gain new information in my areas of interest. But the important thing is you really need to spend time, hopefully every day, interacting, collaborating with people. And so what I recommend is start a Twitter account and then start following educators, or if you're interested in EBM, follow EBM thought leaders, and I'll give you some of those at the end. It's important to follow blogs of people who are thought leaders. You gain a lot of information from their thoughts about things, so follow education blogs. Follow education chats, and I'll talk more about chats in just a minute. Again, you could substitute EBM for all these individual things. It's useful to use Google+, and I just recently started really using Google+, for coursework and a new degree that I'm getting. And I never really had used it before, mostly because it was blocked at my institution. But as I've started using it, I realized it's a very powerful tool to get a group of followers, much like you would on Twitter, using Google+. So learn about Google+ and try to use it. And finally, there are education groups on Facebook and LinkedIn. This is not a big thing that I like to use personally for my own professional learning network or personal learning network. I'm just not big into Facebook or LinkedIn, but there are groups on there that you could use if that's your thing. And again, I mentioned Twitter has become a very important tool for personal learning networks. So what I want to talk about, and if you know a lot about Twitter, you're not going to gain much from this, but if you're a newbie to Twitter, hopefully you'll learn something. So what is Twitter? Well, Twitter is a micro blogging tool. So it's not a traditional blog that you could write as much as you want. Twitter is limited to 140 characters in each tweet or post that you put out. And this is the anatomy of a tweet. So some people will put in an avatar or a picture. It could be their face, could be something else. They'll have their name, and then they'll have their Twitter username, and always begins with an @. In this particular case, this is a retweet, so it'll always put RT, and he's sending a response to another Twitter member here, and then there is the main bulk of the message of his Twitter post. This is a shortened link that I'll talk about in just a second. And then there's some other things that will always be at the bottom. You could hit this to reply back to this particular tweet. You could retweet it yourself, meaning it gets sent out like it's coming from you. And you could favorite it with a star. Now, I really like to use the favorite button only in one case. And that case is when I want to try to remember to read something later, or I think it's important and I don't want it lost. I'll favorite it because it'll get put in my Twitter account in my collection of favorites, and I can go back to it later. Retweeting does much the same thing. It'll add it to your tweet, so it'll always be there and you can find it. But I like to use favoriting to use this because it saves it very easily in Twitter for me. And that's just a blow up of that particular area. So if you're going to reply to someone, make sure you put @ in their username if you want to reply back to somebody. And if you want somebody to retweet, and I made a little bit of a mistake earlier, if you want somebody to retweet your particular tweet, if you put in RT, it asks sort of Twitter people to retweet your particular tweet, and it gets out and further and into their network of people, so you can expand your influence that way. And one key to remember, because you are limited to 140 characters, some web links, I like to link to articles and other web pages and things like that. If they're pretty long, you're going to have to shorten them, and these are just two tools that you can use to shorten links, and then you can put that into your tweet. So I mentioned earlier to join a Twitter chat. These are very interesting because they're about a very specific topic area, and education has a lot of different Twitter chats in them, and it's always very topic based, and people pose specific questions and you answer those questions as time goes on, but it's very focused. If you have a broad Twitter account, you're going to have lots of information on lots of different topics. So following a chat, a specific chat, and they tend to occur at certain times of the week at very specific hours, is a much better way to gain very focused information. Now, Twitter chats, if somebody just tweets out and as part of a Twitter chat, it's going to be listed in your group of tweets, and you can get lost. So what I recommend is using some sort of tool, an organizer, to follow your chats. And there are a couple of different organizers out there. I don't think one is any better than another. You just get used to using one or the other. The one on the left is something called TweetDeck. And one of the things you can see, it will order a group of chats in a column, and you sort of arrange how you want this to look. And you can see the other tool here, I think it's going to be Hootsuite, does things very similar way, just puts things in an order. Here's the chat in particular that this person is following, and all the tweets under those individual chats are organized that way. So it's just a much better way, an easier way to follow a chat that's going on, instead of it just getting mixed in with all your other tweets. And if you're going to follow and respond back to a chat, you have to put this hashtag in. So one of the things you can see here at this chat is that it's a hashtag, then CCSS chat. Don't know what that stands for, but when you respond back and answer questions, you want to send it back to that chat only, and the way to do that is to put the hashtag and the name of the chat in your response or in your tweet. So finally, who should you start following if you're interested in EBM and improving your personal learning network with EBMers? Well, a group of people that I tend to follow, who I think, for me, I found give out useful information, is the Evidence Doc, Trish Greenhalgh, Paul Ash, Paul Glaziou, and Victor Montori. And these are 5 groups of people. If you add them and follow them in Twitter, you'll see they retweet out other things. And what you do is you see who they're retweeting commonly, and then you start following those people, and you see who they tweet out or who they retweet, and you start following those people, and then slowly you build a large network. And then when you start putting out tweets, these people will see your tweets and might even follow you. And then once people are following you and they retweet your stuff, it really gets out to a very broad network. So this is how you start. You follow a few people. Often it's sort of Twitter etiquette. If somebody follows, or if you follow somebody, they tend to follow you back. Though don't feel that you have to do that. I don't do that always, because there's some people that follow me that don't put out things that are very useful to me educationally, so I don't follow them back. You don't absolutely have to, but often people will follow you back, and then all of a sudden you have access to their network of people, and then it can grow and grow and grow, and finally you have a very powerful learning tool. So hopefully that helps you understand how to develop a personal learning network. I think it's a very useful tool to improve your knowledge, whether it be of something you're interested in your personal life or something that you're interested in for work.